It's Robert Farland here, and today we're going to be taking a look at Bridgerton, the brand new hit TV series on Netflix, and how its historical inaccuracies have led to its success. First of all, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen Bridgerton, I thoroughly recommend. It's actually a really fun and entertaining TV series and well worth checking out on Netflix.
You could not sleep for some reason. All the excitement, I presume.
Bridgerton has actually been one of the most successful TV series of the last year for Netflix, and that's saying something because they get huge viewing figures.
How wonderful.
Shonda Rhimes, congratulations, you have finally broken the death grip that the BBC has had on period dramas for the last 300 years. It is incredibly important to look at how this show has actually introduced a brand new generation, a brand new audience to the concept of the period drama.
You and I were destined for each other.
So just to put this into context, Hulu did a study on that particular generation, 18 to 24s, to see what type of content they were watching.
This author wonders which brazen matchmaker shall rise to such a challenge.
And what they found was this particular generation were interested in non-traditional content, which shared and explored cultural changes and gravitated towards large social issues that are facing society today. However, let's get back to Bridgerton now. I think I need to dispel a couple of myths about Bridgerton that I know have come out in the media surrounding its release over the Christmas holidays of 2020, or the year that shall not be named.
Tell me I'm wrong.
So the first myth. Bridgerton has been cited as being overtly sexualized. It's not been sexualized towards one gender or another, and we're going to get back to how important that is. But a lot of people have stated why they feel like maybe this is too much of a sexualization of this particular period. However, writers, historians, and the producers of the show all agree that the Georgian period was the actual sexual revolution in the UK.
May God have mercy on their souls.
Now, why do historians believe that this was the sexual revolution? Religion started to leave a lot of its rules about sexuality by the wayside as it started to evolve alongside culture. On a side note, it's actually quite amazing how many of the issues that Bridgerton deals with that our generation are still having to deal with in some way, shape, and form.
Most undignified.
The second myth perpetuated by a lot of the media coming out around Bridgerton is that they cast black actors when there were no such people of colour in such positions of power in that era.
Perhaps we need to help her to see things a bit more clearly.
Well, that is categorically untrue. I believe that this has probably come from the way in which media has been representing previous period dramas as not really having black people in society outside of being handmaids and slaves and people of service, instead of actually people who are in the upper echelons of society, which is what Bridgerton really brings to the fore, and I think is an incredibly powerful, empowering moment in culture and the stories that we tell right now.
Where one suitor goes, the rest will surely follow.
So with that in mind, I think I really wanted to take a look at where I think Bridgerton really shines, really stands out from the crowd. Because I think it's made some brilliant creative choices in its effort to ensure that it actually applies to not just the audience that already enjoy period dramas, but also the new audience, also that younger generation looking for content that they can feel connected to as well. And the first thing is actually going back to what I said before. The choice of the ethnicities for the actors is incredibly important. So rather than just having the token actor on the side who fulfills a quota, Bridgerton feels like a fully cohesive decision about the mix of ethnicity within the show. It's just, I think, is absolutely brilliant, especially considering going back to Hulu's study talking about culture and the way culture is changing.
And I must say I'm impressed.
Another major creative choice, which I think is absolutely brilliant, is the modernization of the music within the show. And I'm not just talking about music that's laid in over the top, which would be non-diegetic sound. I'm actually talking about the diegetic sound, which means sound that could have been recorded in the location itself. So if I turn a radio on and that radio is in frame or just off frame, that is diegetic sound. It's sound that has been created within that space. Then if I'm walking down a road and there's rock music playing over the top, that would be non-diegetic sound. That's a track that's been placed in over the top without any obvious source for that sound. So what Bridgerton have done then is they've actually chosen modern tracks and then had the orchestras that are in the scenes play those tracks. They've had the various characters in those scenes dance to the modern music that's been interpreted by an orchestra. So the sound is of the era, but the actual score is modern. And in this way, many people probably wouldn't recognize it, although they might recognize something similar, but they would actually start to more easily connect to the story, to the content that they're watching, in a brilliant move that for most people will be totally subconscious.
I did not realize.
Well, how could you have done? It is the very reason I'm here, sister.
Now, this show is about coming of age, both emotionally and sexually, seen through the eyes of a man and woman who are courting but don't really know they're courting. That's, in essence, the story. Now, both of the genders throughout the story, through these subplots, are seen as sexualized in different ways. And the series explores that in very, very interesting ways, using the rules of the world that they've set up.
What are you suggesting?
So when they actually show the male lead with a 9 o'clock shadow that he's sporting throughout the series, this is really not a facial hairstyle that would have been seen in that era. Most of them would have had mutton chops or a full-on beard, or they would have been completely shaven. It was not a style that was seen as attractive in that period. At the same time, it also differentiates that character to a lot of the other characters who are sporting more traditional, clean-shaven, bearded looks throughout this series. So it was not only creative in that way, but it means that he is more attractive to the audience watching at home who have the more modern aesthetic ideals.
They're all staring, Mother.
Next area that I think was also quite interesting in sexualizing the male gender during the series was when we actually got to see the male lead in a boxing ring with a friend.
Admit it, friend. You missed me.
So it isn't until you also get to the female sexualization that we also recognize that there's been very, very sensitive choices to the way in which they have been portrayed as well. And that's not always been through the showing of tons of flesh whenever possible. They've not overtly sexualized the women. If you want to know more about the overt sexualization of women in film and TV, I've done a really, really in-depth episode on the male gaze in The Queen's Gambit.
I insist.
So in summary, I believe Bridgerton has been such a resounding success, not just because it appealed to the original audience for period dramas, but because they specifically chose elements to tweak just slightly, just enough to apply to a brand new audience interested in that content, interested in multicultural stories that are emotionally soothing and bringing social issues that are affecting us today into the light in a new and interesting way. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget I bring out a new film analysis every Thursday where I explore films and TV series of the day in various ways. Also, don't forget to check out the links below to up your game on your next film.